Awesome. Well, welcome back everyone to our second to last Tour Tuesday of this school year. I cannot believe it. My name is Lizzie Gray and I'm a project coordinator for Connected Blaine County. And as always, I will be your host today. For today's event, I am joined by multiple members of the Hyak team. Hyak is a local internet service provider over on the coast. Thank you all for being here. Would you like to just briefly introduce yourselves? We'll get into your roles in just a second, but maybe we'll start with Robbie.
Sure. My name's Robbie. I'm one of the kind of chief cat wranglers here at Hyak, and on paper it says CEO, but I'll turn it over to Neil here. He's our COO, our chief operations officer, and so he handles most of the day-to-day stuff. So I'll kind of pass it off to Neil.
Yeah, he already did it for me. My name's Neil Ecker. I'm the COO of Hyak and kind of handle the day-to-day operations and mix things between policies and procedures and actually making stuff happen. Down below me is going to be Drew. He's one of our lead developers. I'll let him take it over.
You did. Oops, unmute. My name is Drew. Yep, I'm the lead developer here, so I do all the programming that's needed for clients and our internal systems.
Very cool. Katie?
Hi, my name's Katie. I'm the office assistant over here, and I handle a lot of the office type stuff, scheduling and billing.
And Dane.
Hi, I'm Dane. I typically deal with the businesses as far as it goes with Microsoft products and assisting with a lot of our local businesses around here with that.
All right.
So,
awesome. Yeah. Well, what a lineup. Welcome, everyone. Before we start, I do want to remind all the students tuning in that if you have not watched it already, be sure to watch the actual tour video of Hyak. Jenna would have sent that to you on Thursday and then again today. And if you haven't watched it, be sure to do so after the Q&A. And as always, while we are up here chatting, we can't see or hear you, but you can interact with us through the chat box, the Q&A feature, or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you to ask any questions that you have aloud. This whole 45 minutes to an hour is dedicated to answering your questions, so do not hold back. All right, I will get us started with just one of the most basic questions, which is just asking all of you about how you wound up at Hyak, into the current positions that you're in.
We want to start from high to low or low to high?
I was going to say, let's go backwards. Maybe let's have Dane go first and then Katie and Drew.
all right. Well, I started with Hyak. I just shot Neil and kind of a resume asking if they were looking for anybody and kind of got hired on from there. My prior experience was mostly with Apple products, so dealing with Microsoft stuff was a little bit different, but nothing out of my wheelhouse. Yeah.
Dane, can I ask, did you do any schooling after or before you came on with the team?
No, I did schooling way long ago. I went to tech college, dealt with stuff that's mostly outdated at this point.
Got it. Okay. And did you have similar jobs like this one before you landed with Robbie and his team?
Not quite. I worked for Apple for almost 6 years dealing with iOS and Mac OS, which is totally different wheelhouse from what I deal with now.
Okay. Very cool. All right, Katie.
All right, so I've been working here for almost 2 years now. I knew that I wanted some type of office work, but I had never done that before. So Neil and Robbie kind of took a chance on me by hiring me and training me to do everything for them. So great. No prior experience or anything.
None at all? Was this your first
None.
job?
Yes.
Wow.
Not my first job, but no experience in the office field.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
Yep, and Katie found us with a regular job posting too. And so one of the things that is kind of important for some of the students, so sometimes you'll get jobs referred to you from a friend or a family member. Sometimes you might actually see them posted online. And so Dane kind of had known Neil, and so that was more of like a referral type thing, while Katie found us from an actual job posting.
Wow.
So those comes from a lot of different places.
So if just to interrupt our scheduled programming, I just have a quick question, Robbie. So Katie came to you with no office experience, but you hired her. What set her apart? What got her the job?
It's actually pretty straightforward. Her attitude is phenomenal. And when we went through everybody's resumes, some of our jobs don't require a ton of experience. Like some of our outside plant fiber, like I'm going to go help somebody install internet, don't require a lot of experience, but stuff that we can train. But in the office assistant role, we weren't necessarily looking for somebody that had been an office manager for 20 years and needed to do a lot of complex stuff. But she was able to figure out, at the time, this was a big deal. She was able to figure out the Microsoft Teams online meeting type thing. This was pre-COVID. And so before everybody was familiar with Zoom and Teams and whatever else. And so she was one out of like 10 resumes we went through. Maybe we only had 2 or 3 people that showed up on time, were polite, finished their resumes out properly. It's honestly really fundamental stuff. We didn't have a ton of huge, big requirements to ask. And so Katie's attitude really set her apart and continues to do. She's been with us almost 2 years now, which I can't believe. It goes fast.
That's great. Thank you for providing some insight. I just think it's really important for students, especially high school students, to hear that with the right attitude and with like a hunger to learn, you absolutely can walk into jobs with very little experience. So.
Yeah, don't feel like you don't. If it's something you want to do, apply for it. I mean, what's the worst thing somebody could say is no, and you can learn why and whatnot. And she came in with the right attitude.
Yep. What Neil and I are after when we're hiring people is almost all that attitude. We can teach some of the stuff that we do, and even Dane had very much a similar thing. Is that Dane didn't have like the specific skill set of some of the Microsoft 365 stuff, but he had worked on phones and call centers and had the customer service experience that we were looking for and had a good attitude about it. So
that's great. Well, thank you. And sorry, Drew, to hop in right before your big introduction, but could you tell us just a little bit about your career path to where you are now?
Sure. Yeah. I actually just hit, I think, 5 years last month with Neil and Robbie, and I was actually here before the companies were merged together. So I kind of fell into it a little bit because I had a job I was working for doing dish installs, and the jobs were kind of drying up a little bit. So I was working 2-3 days a week. And actually my wife overheard Neil one day talk about how he needs people. And so I had an interview with Neil and started pretty quickly after that. And my job role here in the last 5 years has definitely changed. So I've gone from grunt work to I've pretty much done it all. And now I'm in the office most of the time doing development work. So that's kind of where my background was. I was a programmer right out of high school. Did that for a long time. And then that work kind of started drying up. So yeah, I was with Dish for a little bit. I went to Neil, and shortly after started doing work for Robbie. And a couple of years after that, we merged as a companies.
Cool. Very nice. You were featured in the tour video. I don't know if you've seen the final version, but you were talking a lot about how you like to take apart and build computers. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from students. And so it's cool to see like the actual professional in that job, talking about how that was something that you really liked to do in high school, because I hear that all the time. All right.
And I actually shared the same exact thing too, Lizzie. I built my first computer when I graduated high school and was going into college. And I'm like, well, if I can work on a car and I know how mechanics work, I can take this video card and this processor and plug it together with this RAM and motherboard. And I built my first computer the summer after I graduated. And that was my first exposure to tech. I took typing in high school when that was still a thing, and had typing class. But I knew almost nothing about computers or networking or tech when I graduated high school.
Jeez. Wow. What an evolution. I love it.
Yep.
All right, Neil, talk to us. Where have you been? How'd you get here?
Oh God, my story is a little bit longer. And I just sent you a message too that we have another guy that's wanting to join in. I think you might have confused Matt, who is joining right now, with Drew when it comes to computer building.
Sorry.
They both.
No worries. I do computer building as well.
So that's all good. I am going to defer to Matt because he is our longest standing employee real quick. I'm going to let him do his thing. And the reason I knew he was here is he actually sent me a note about how He submitted. So Matt, I'll let you take it away.
I thought that was a student.
What's up, you guys? I'm Matt. I was the guy who was explaining pretty much the computer building when I believe you guys were in. When I first got here to Oregon from California, mind you, in California, I had jobs like flooring, construction. I worked at ski resorts, campgrounds, nothing techie at all. Then I came here, got a job working construction just because I needed to find a job right off the get, and kept that job, and then started looking for other jobs in the tech field, and ran across Neil's shop, which was Full Spectrum Computers at the time. And yeah, sure enough, I brought in a handwritten resume to him, and he tried me out probably like a week later or so after I called him back and had some stuff for me to try out. And here we are today building computers pretty much every week. And I love it, enjoy it. It's a good field to get into. Seeming everybody's going to need a computer or some sort of computer help. So it's definitely something to get into.
Absolutely. Can you tell us just a little bit more about this handwritten resume? Was it just out of need, like you didn't have a computer or a printer, or?
No, it's just a thing that I usually, it shows effort. Like anybody can go to a computer and print out a piece of paper.
True.
But it shows more effort when you're actually writing it out. Of course, like I went online to see like how a resume was laid out and like what you need to write in it.
Mhm.
And then of course I wrote it, and at the time my wife rewrote it for me because I have really chicken scratch.
This sounds about right.
But yeah, sure enough, like he even kept that resume for so long for me. And that's what I also love about my boss, is that like they actually care.
That's very cool. Thank you. What a unique story. I've not heard of that before, so that's great.
Yeah. So back to me. I guess I'll make a comment. It pays to know Neil, right? That's what everybody said here. No, I'm just kidding. I was been a hobby is computers forever, right? I used to take apart my parents' lawnmowers and things at their house because I wanted to know how things work. And then I graduated into taking apart computers and figuring out how those worked. And fast forward a long time, I was doing personal consulting in IT stuff, hooking up TVs, fixing computers, building computers, the kind of the basic stuff, and then still played with them as a hobby. And I had the opportunity to buy a business, which I did, which you heard Matt mention, Full Spectrum Computers, and that's where Drew started as well. And so in Florence, we turned that from a very part-time business into a full-time business with some employees. My first hire was an office assistant. I like Katie back in the day for Full Spectrum, that could handle deposits and scheduling and bookkeeping stuff and all that kind of stuff, because you can't work when you start to do a lot of paperwork, but paperwork is what makes the world go round. So gotta have that person. Eventually Robbie came on the scene. I was doing a lot of IT stuff, and we started overlapping with some internet stuff, and Robbie had started So You Saw Broadband in Florence, and there was only 3 providers in the time in town that anybody would recommend, one of which we wouldn't use. The other one's the big corporate guys, and then there was Robbie. His service was great, people loved him, and we started to work together. He would hire some of my guys to go do his installs. I would recommend people to him for higher level networking gigs. And before too long, we found ourselves calling each other all the time for help with different issues. And we worked so well together, at some point we decided to merge. And so Saisla Broadband and Full Spectrum became Hyak, and the team that you see today. And so I've just been here from the get-go. I love helping people. IT is fun. Challenges are fun. 4 years ago, if you told me I'd be building a fiber optic network and running a 365 managed services provider at the same time all across the country, I never would guess, but here we are.
Wow.
And Robbie, your turn.
Yeah, Neil touched on most of that. We started Sayusa Broadband in 2010, 2011, and started doing fixed wireless primarily back then, where we install a little dish on the outside of the house, and been doing that for quite a few years. And kind of as Neil mentioned, our businesses started overlapping more, and Sayusa Broadband was using quite a few of Full Spectrum's employees to help out with work, and we were continuing to grow. And some point, it just finally made sense to just bring the two companies together. And that was already 4 years ago, I think, next month. That also happened to coincide when we started our fiber to the home project and kind of rebranded the two companies to Hyak. So like half of our business is all fiber internet, and we're burying conduit in the ground and digging in the ground and playing with heavy machinery. And the other half of our business is primarily like cloud security. We do like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and email, and we help kind of small to mid-sized businesses anywhere from 5 employees all the way up to a couple hundred employees manage some of their corporate email and some of their information security stuff.
Interesting. So is that what Dane, is that what you're referring to when you talk about needing to work within the Microsoft suite?
Yep, that is
Okay.
exactly what I do.
That answered a question I had. Great. Okay. So we have a lot of different career paths represented on this call, but if I was a student interested in potentially job shadowing at Hyak, what other careers could I see? What other positions?
From people that aren't here, Chris would be kind of our outside plant or engineering person, somebody that helps design and run outside crews to do the installations. And so that can be kind of what Robbie alluded to, some heavy machines that could be running a trencher to dig a hole, or it could be running a shovel. It's not all pretty and fun machinery. You get some dirty work out there. But doing those kinds of jobs, installation. Matt does some of this where he'll run cable and put up TV antennas or the fixed wireless radios and stuff. So it's called an installation technician. So there's some of those other roles that we have too.
Okay. And do any of the positions absolutely require a 4-year degree?
No.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. We both Neil and I, this may be just unique to Neil and I, but we would almost always hire for experience and attitude. And there's some things that like having a professional certification might help if we're managing firewalls, or even some of the stuff Dane does with Microsoft 365. There's a whole bunch of professional Microsoft certifications that really anybody of any age can take.
Okay.
And if Neil and I were going to go hire somebody to, if we needed another Dane because we were growing and had a bunch of business, which we might be doing later this year, I would take somebody that was 20 years old with a professional Microsoft certification that had experience versus somebody with a 4-year degree.
Okay. And do you know how long it takes to get your Microsoft certification?
Dane, Neil, I mean, how long was that exam and test? It was 36 hours.
Some of the classes are 2 days of online training and a half a day for wrap-up test, and then a proctored test in a day. And you can get a certification for a very specific use case, and you can get as many as you want or make them as broad as you want. It just depends where you like being. Some people love to play with email. Some people love to play with virtual servers. Some people love to play with networking. Some people love to play with mobile devices. When we brought Dane on, he had worked in an Apple environment, like he said, forever, and didn't know too much about Windows and not too much about Office 365. But his willingness to learn, persistence to training, he exceeds my ability now when it comes to Office 365 mobility stuff. So yeah,
that's really hard for Neil to say that out
it
loud
is.
too. But that is
Yeah.
exactly what happens though. As businesses grow and you need to hire more people, that skill set just becomes really important. And Brianna, to answer your question,
Thank you.
for a job like a help desk technician or something like that, most of the time we wouldn't require a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. One of the biggest challenges that younger folks will have is some of that experience you guys just don't have yet. And so things that we would look for in that instance is, helping out a parent or a relative or a friend's business. If you guys were, working in IT, if somebody came to us and had went out of their way to go get a professional Microsoft certification, even when they were, 18, 19, 20, it's not hard. It doesn't cost a lot. And they had been dabbling with that same technology somewhere else. Those would all be things that we were looking for. It kind of goes back to that attitude and that willingness to learn and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you for addressing that question. That's great. Take something off.
Sure. I'm trying to think of everybody in the office, Neil. Am I the only one with a college degree? I think we might have an associate's or 3, but that might be it.
I made it sound bad. I made it through like a year and 3/4 of mine and just didn't finish it because the opportunity arose and I didn't need to.
Nope.
And so why do I want to spend that extra money and do it? And I'm not saying that degrees aren't a good thing and going through school. They show effort too. You know, if you made it through a 2-year program and you came out, you might not have the experience, but you had the effort of staying in school and finishing that program and stuff. And so that does have something to show for that as well.
Yep. While I did finish my 4-year degree and have a bachelor's of science, I wouldn't be where I am today without that degree. I wouldn't have built the relationships. I wouldn't have the knowledge. That was a really impactful thing in my life to go through that 4-year degree process and get that. And I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that we wouldn't be doing what we're doing as a company today if I hadn't have gone to college. So everybody has kind of different life experiences and things that happen. So
there's a role for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. So no degrees required. I've heard you name a couple of professional skills or soft skills that are appealing to you all in potential candidates or potential employees. What else could a student do right now while they're in high school to better their chances of getting a job in your industry?
I would say.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I would say that doing, having hobbies and sticking with them and things that you enjoy that you want to work at. There's always an opening there. When we interview, I'm just going to pick on Dane again. When we talked to Dane in an interview, I think that, he was talking about some of the gear that he has in his personal house that he uses for his computer stuff, which is what we sell to people. And we're like, okay, that's interesting because you don't normally find somebody that buys this kind of stuff and sticks it in their house. And then when we were going through the other process, I can't remember the name of the conference that came up, and I might let Robbie do it. But yes, there's a DEF CON hacking conference once a year that Robbie had just gone to, and Dane had visited, and that was a sealed deal for Robbie at that point. Like, oh, anybody that wants to go to DEF CON and does that in their own personal time definitely has a place here. So, yeah, that was one.
Okay.
Yep, I'm a big fan of internships. If you guys have the opportunity to get an internship somewhere, again, through friend, family, chamber, or exactly, yeah, connected Lane County, a chamber, a church, however you guys have a relationship, ask parents or grandparents if they have a connection for anybody looking for an internship. Those I have found to be extremely valuable, both for you guys as students and kind of growing your talents and being exposed to new things. But when you put that on a resume that, hey, I did an internship with, a congressman's office in Salem or one of the local banks or credit unions, that aside from getting you guys job experience, looks pretty good on your resume and lets a potential employer know that you guys are kind of taking your career path seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get to Christian's question in the chat, would a high school student and an applicant with computer science career technical courses on their resume stand out to you? Yeah.
Yes is the short answer.
Okay, great.
Yep. Anybody that's been through some of the CTE stuff has a lot of value, even on the construction side. I can't recall the details, but I feel like there's some CTE stuff inside of Sayus District today. And so even on the construction side, we're talking a lot about the tech right now, but the other half on the construction side, like I can pick on Drew now. He was running a bucket truck here a few weeks ago. We have a big hydraulic boom and, installing stuff and being able to use a drill and safely operate a hydraulic boom. Some of that stuff we teach, but, some basic construction stuff has a lot of value too.
Great. And I think Sayusla does have both those CT programs.
Mm-hmm.
So Christian says, I'd like to build a computer, but I can't afford the parts. Do you have any recommendations on how to get started?
I might let Matt kind of answer that because he handles most of our computer building. Affording the parts, I'm assuming that Christian's talking about, building something that's brand new and the bestest and all that kind of stuff. Matt, you have some ideas?
When it comes to that, kind of ordeal if you can't afford the parts. I usually tell people, there's ways you could go buy computer parts and see if they have like throwaway stuff and kind of piece your computer together like that. I mean, it's kind of hard to build a computer and especially trying to find computer parts nowadays with all the Bitcoin craze and mining craze. All these computer parts are really expensive, so that probably has a factor in it too.
You might check with your school to see if they're outing some of the old equipment, that they might be upgrading things, and you could get parts from them. I know that, from our shop, we used to have lots of parts that we just get rid of that didn't really have too much value. I guess if he's asking a question about whether it's to learn how to build a computer or if he wants to build a computer for himself that's super fast, those are two different things. You can build a computer out of old parts and learn the process. You're just not going to get anything of completed value out of it other than education and playing. I mean, that's how I started, was a 46 Packard Bell from Sears. I mean, that was my first computer, and I take it apart, I put it back together, I'd break it, I'd fix it, and then eventually talked my dad into buying me a bunch of parts when I was 14. So that's
Awesome.
that's how I did it.
Okay, cool. I would say too, I feel like I've seen computers at Goodwill. I know that at least in the Eugene Springfield area, there's a I think it's called like Next Step Recycling, but it's just for like electronics. And so do you have anything like that on the coast?
We don't. Our recycle center takes electronics and then takes them over to a place like Next Step or something like that for processing to see if there's any value, or they could be sold or used someplace else, or at least recycled in a good manner.
Yeah.
Bigger areas have computer swap meets that might be something to look into. I don't know if there's anything like that, especially with COVID right now, that you can go out and get to, but I've been to a couple of those and you can find things floating around there.
Good ideas. Good ideas. Brianna asks, please ignore if we've already answered. What skills cannot be taught on the job? What types of professional skills would you want someone to have coming into your company?
I might actually throw that one to Katie here, just because Neil and I spent some time talking with Katie about some of our job postings, and she gets to interact with a lot of people that are submitting resumes. So Katie, from your perspective, what makes somebody stand out to you, or something that Neil and I are looking for in one of these resumes or job postings?
I think I'm going to go back just to the attitude and the willingness to learn. Customer service is always a really good one too. That's pretty big in our field here. So basically any job with customer service. I've worked at stores. I've been a housekeeper before. Just lots of customer service type skilled jobs.
Are there any major red flags that you see on applications? Like if you're reviewing an application and you see this thing, it's an automatic no.
One or two typos is probably acceptable, but like a dozen of them, probably not. So like some of the just basic cleanliness and timeliness. If somebody showed up and hadn't showered or wasn't dressed moderately professionally, even for some of our construction jobs, we expect everybody to be dressed pretty well, show up on time or early. Some people have the opinion that if you're not 5 minutes early, you're already late. Especially for if you guys were coming in for interviews, or even doing one on Teams or Zoom or whatever. So it's really just a lot of basic stuff. Take your time, be prepared. One of the biggest things that is like a really good flag for me, or said in different ways, a really big red flag, is if the person hasn't researched the company or the job at all. If Neil and I are interviewing somebody for a position and they're like, well, what company is this again? Or what's this job description? It's an instant veto, exactly. And so nearly every company has a website today. And so if you guys are applying for something, go read their About Us section, understand how the company got started, what their product lines look like. If somebody is selling vacuums, try to familiarize yourself with what vacuums they sell and why they think they're better than Dyson or Kirby or Bristle or whatever. And so that type of preparation or non-preparation are really big indicators for me.
Yeah, I would say what can't be taught: functionality, the willingness to work, communications, Well, communication can be taught, but the willingness to learn communication and actually communicate, attitude, like Katie said, all those things can't be taught, and you can't really change a person when they're. I mean, that's just who they are, and so they'll fit well with some people and not with others. Um, but yeah, we can train almost anything. I mean, Chris, Chris used to work in Dish with Drew way back in the day and knew zero about fiber optic networks. And now he is designing it and helping us construct it.
Wow.
And that's all within, a 3-year time frame. So you don't, the skills can all be trained if the willingness to learn it there. Like Katie doesn't want to know how a fiber optic network works. That's not what she wants to know. She wants to do office manager skill set. So it's all about your skill set.
Absolutely. So, Katie, I have one more question for you. We're learning about the job application process. In fact, I think we have a webinar on it next week. And so, when someone submits a resume, the application process isn't necessarily over. So, are you, as someone who's doing follow-up to schedule interviews, do you take into consideration your interactions with applicants after they've handed in a resume?
Most definitely. Just the friendliness, coming back to that, how they answer the phone, if they answer their phone, if I have to call them 3 or 4 times and leave voicemails to get them into the office for an interview, all of that's pretty big.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, you got to want it. We're pretty good at sniffing out if somebody wants it or not.
Nice.
I'm going to add a little bit to that interview process. We just filled our outside plant laborer position that we needed to expand on, and we had 3 different applicants, and all had very different backgrounds. One of which, you would look at an application and probably not be the first choice. However, he was our first choice, and he got hired and had a little bit of a hiccup after the hiring process, but his willingness to continue through the process and solve the problem on his own boded highly for me and Robbie, and the willingness for us to help work with him and keep him on board the staff. And he's actually a really great worker for us, an employee. So that effort, again, the effort you put forward says a lot about you.
Okay. Do you have company vehicles?
We do.
We do.
Do just certain employees drive them?
Yeah. So in most of our jobs, we require things like you need to have a valid driver's license. None of our equipment right now is big enough for a CDL.
Okay.
So that isn't a requirement for us yet, although that's probably going to happen by the end of the year. But yeah, having a clean driving record to drive a company vehicle, we effectively have to put you on our business insurance. And so if the insurance agent says no, and you can't drive a company vehicle, then that might be a problem.
Okay. And drug testing along with that?
Yeah. Yep. Every business has a different opinion about this. People that have more drivers sometimes do like regular drug tests. We can do random drug tests, but it's not something we worry too much about. We're a pretty small shop though, and we know everybody pretty well. So.
Okay, great. Ricardo's curious about the form of business ownership. So
sure, I can take that one. Legally, we're what's called an LLC, is a limited liability corporation. And so in an LLC, you have a concept of members, which is similar to shareholders. Like you could go buy a stock of GameStop or somebody else, and you'd be a shareholder of that company. In LLCs, you're a member. And so Neil and I are both members of our LLC, and we own equity or shares of the company. And we have a few other small investors, but Neil and I are kind of the 2 main investors. So that's it on the business ownership side. On the advertising side, we kind of dabble in a few different things. We don't do really one over the other. We made a decision that we were going to support the local movie theater here in Florence and the local newspaper, and they were doing a sales thing. And so we bought a whole bunch of screen time with the movie theater, and then COVID shut us down. So that particular advertising avenue didn't necessarily pan out, although I'm sure it'll come back around. But we do the newspaper to a small extent, the radio to a small extent, the theater we tried and we'll probably come back to. We do a little bit of everything. Right now, Katie's actually been doing a lot of direct mail pieces. We had a couple postcards made up, and then she can hand address them and mail them out. We are pretty active on social media. We have an Instagram and a Facebook account. I think most businesses will find that they could probably do a better job there, much like us. But we share a lot of important details and things like that through our Facebook account. We've dabbled with Facebook marketing a tiny bit, but haven't really done too much there.
And who runs your social media pages?
Well, from a permission standpoint, me, Katie, and Neil have direct access to all that. And so most of the time it'd be one of the three of us. However, we really commonly get content from Drew or Chris, one of our guys that's in the field and not on the phone with us today, because they're out in the field and doing lots of stuff. And so they can take pictures of, really poorly wired networking closets, and like we can use it as an example of things not to do. Or we made a few fiber videos when we first got started a couple of years ago, and strapped a GoPro to one of the tractors and the saws and had some video made. And so we can get content from a lot of different places, but mainly it's kind of me, Neil, and Katie that manage that publicly.
Very cool. So Ricardo teaches a business and marketing class in Cottage Grove, and they typically can't get on till 2:30 because their schedule changed. So could you just review really quickly what we talked about as far as folks needing a degree to work at Hyak?
Sure. So that answer varies, Ricardo. We have a couple different types of jobs. We're a tiny bit unique in that maybe half of our business is the ISP side, and the other half is what's called an MSP, or a managed service provider. So picking on like Dane on this call with us here, he mainly sits on our MSP side and helps businesses with Microsoft 365, networking, computers, printers, things like that. Whereas somebody like Matt and Dane work kind of more on like our retail computer side and the internet side, where we provide fiber internet and compete with Charter and companies like that. From a degree perspective, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Most of our new hires that we're going through right now, we don't require a bachelor's degree for. Neil and I both kind of like to train and coach employees as they go through some development. There's some situations where we go after more experience, as we kind of continue to grow our business, and Dane and Neil get busier in some aspects, we'll have to add another person. And when we go and hire that person, a college degree is going to be less important to us than experience with, Amazon AWS or Microsoft Azure or 365. That experience is what's pretty important to us in our field. And to answer your next question, how do we compete price-wise with larger companies like Charter? We compete very effectively with them. We're generally speaking cheaper than them. We don't require contracts, which Charter doesn't either. But we generally win business because we're we're really the local option, and we don't play pricing games. We don't have promotional introductory rates, and I'm sure most people on the phone have probably heard a parent or a grandparent cursing about their internet bill going up. And so while we can't say we'll never increase prices, we don't do a lot of that promotional stuff that other big national companies do, where you have some intro price of $30 for 3 months, and then it goes to 75 when you're done.
And I'm sure if you ever raise prices, you let people know.
Yeah. And I'm sure it will happen at some point, but yes, we tend to over communicate a lot of those types of things.
So we did a tour of Emerald Broadband in Eugene and out in the Veneta area in the fall. And Ben Shapiro is one of their technicians, and he was telling us about how at Emerald, and I'm going to butcher this, but at Emerald, the upfront costs for households that have to be connected through like new fiber is typically like the cost up front is a lot higher, and it tends to kind of scare people. But then over like a long-term period of time, the price goes down and is like more cost effective than some of the larger companies. Is that similar at all to anything that you're all doing, or is it?
Yep, very, very much so. When building fiber is a very capital intensive type of thing, and so we are kind of a weird small business in that we're small. There's 8 of us at a given time, maybe 9. But what we do basically takes a lot of money. We have to have a lot of capital. And really what we do is we take that money and we bury it in the ground. And, on average, it might cost us between $1,500 to $2,500 a house
Wow.
to hook somebody up to fiber. And that's like our cost to deliver that. And so selling internet at $50 a month, that makes your ROI, or your return on investment, extremely lengthy, which, every business has its kind of pluses and minuses. And if, you were a tech startup in San Francisco, that's not their business model. But both us and Emerald and other locally owned ISPs, we generally are here for our communities, and we want to make long-term investments. Neil and I aren't going anywhere. We're not going to be able to, make a quick buck and leave. Nothing is a quick buck in ISP land. And so, yeah, we definitely have a high amount of upfront capital that's required. It just costs us a lot of money to hook somebody up.
Yeah.
And then the goal is that we have this really killer product that somebody wants to pay us for every month for the next quite a few years out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Neil, anything you wanted to add to that?
That was well said.
No, you hit it. It costs quite a bit of money to get it in the ground, but over time, the network starts to pay for itself, and then the longevity of fiber is going to outdo other infrastructures out there, right? So copper wires corrode. Their capacities in the old phone lines is what the problem is right now. They just can't carry adequate voltage or signal strength and have too much resistance for any distance to get any kind of high speed. Coax is channel driven, and they can only have so many channels, and so they might have a great download speed, but they can't get a high upload speed. Fiber carries light, and as long as the equipment on both ends of that fiber can change, you can upgrade you upgrade the capacity however much you want.
Great. Do we have any Mapleton or Siuslaw High School grads on the panel right now?
Siuslaw.
Great. Anybody else? Katie, Dana, or Matt? No? Nope. Okay. I was just curious. Ricardo asks, why did you choose your location? Why not be in Eugene or higher population areas?
I might let Robbie take that one over on the ISP side. I know that when he started Siuslaw Broadband in Florence proper, there wasn't really any good high-speed internet. I don't even think 4G was here yet for cellular stuff. And so DSL from CenturyLink and maybe a cable product that got you like a meg or two. And then there was another local company doing some like wireless canopy mesh stuff for trying to, but I would assume that Robbie chose this because of the need to have internet and something to do with his wife being here and coming back to visit or something like that.
My wife was born and raised in Siuslaw, was born at the old hospital and graduated Siuslaw High, and we would always come back and visit her family. And I had worked remote for a long time, and every time I came back, we would always struggle with internet and being able to work remote. Excuse me. My unplanned dog bark here. Apologies, guys. Tax. Yes, sorry. Without quality internet, I really just couldn't do what I needed to do. And that kind of started putting me down the path of, well, what would be an interesting business that we could do to help fix that problem? And kind of stumbled into the fixed wireless side and then transitioned into fiber quite a few years later. But I grew up in Portland, and I'm extremely happy that we're in Florence. I much prefer the small town kind of aspects. Mm-hmm. And, really all of our staff is pretty actively involved in our local community. Building fiber out here is a little bit easier than it is in some of the urban areas that have not necessarily different politics, but just there's lots of hoops to have to jump through. Sometimes things go a little bit slower than you want them to. Not that it's necessarily easier or harder, but it might just be more rewarding out here. It is a challenge as a small company. If we were trying to do this in Eugene, you'd need hundreds of millions of dollars to try to go in and provide a net new fiber service out there.
Yeah, I would answer Ricardo too to say that Eugene or the higher population areas have a much higher house density per square mile. And that's what a lot of the large corporate entities like CenturyLink and Spectrum and Comcast, they all base where they're going to do new builds and upgrades on that service take density. And so, that leaves us rural people out quite a bit of that time. And there's no point in trying to overbuild some of that when it comes to ISP stuff.
Yeah, to be blunt, their ROI is better. Their return on investment is better when the household density is higher. And most of those types of entities are all publicly traded, and their number one priority is always going to be shareholders. And that's just kind of the way it is.
All right. I have a fun question to everyone on the call. Could you name your favorite part about working specifically at Hyak? This could be about like the management style, the culture, but specifically Hyak, not just your job. So your favorite part and the biggest challenge.
I'm gonna let Drew go first. He's been quiet.
I think the biggest thing I like about Hyak is it's more family oriented. So if I need to run out, take care of some family business, I'm not going to be written up or scrutinized for taking off 10 minutes early of the day or something to go to my daughter's t-ball game or something. It's more freedom because at the end of the day they know that I'm probably going to go home, work a couple more hours, kind of fill in the gap that I take off. I'm not micromanaged like I was previously in other jobs, so I get a lot more freedom, and that helps to reduce quite a bit of stress, so I can actually focus on what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. What about a challenge?
A challenge sometimes is meeting deadlines. It's sometimes we get customers that call us up in a panic and emergency, and it's like, hey, I need this done yesterday, and I'm already got wrapped in a couple other jobs where we've had clients that say they need it done yesterday. So sometimes that's a challenge, is kind of struggling projects.
Yeah, totally. All right, thank you. Do you want to nominate someone else?
Yeah, I'm going to nominate
go.
Matt because he just unmuted himself. So
yeah.
So I would say kind of goes with the challenge, and what I love the most is customer service, because in our field and where we live on the coast, there's a lot of like elderly community.
Mhm.
And when you have somebody young, their knowledge of knowing what something is compared to somebody else's knowledge of knowing what it is very hard sometimes. And when you're trying to teach somebody over the phone or whether they're in person, it could be challenging, but the outcome of that, when somebody actually understands and they're getting it makes you feel good as a person, like you're doing your job correctly, and you're also helping somebody out. So
Yep,
that's what I enjoy the most.
I'm sure patience is a virtue on those calls.
Yes, very, very lots of patience.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Let's see who unmutes first, Katie or Dane.
I'll
Dane, go.
The thing I actually like the most is kind of with Drew. It's very family oriented. I love the people who I work with day to day. It's just great bonding. Challenging really just depends on what I'm doing throughout that day. I could be trying to get 100 computers to onboard to Microsoft, or I can be dealing with a nice grandma trying to get a printer set up. So day to day challenges are usually about that. But yeah, I really love what I do. It's like, if you're really good at puzzles, this is fabulous.
Problem solving for days.
Problem solving. Yeah.
Thanks, Dane.
Katie, I guess it's your turn.
I'm going to go along with Drew and Dane, and I just love the small company feel of it. You have a doctor's appointment or something the end of the afternoon, you can go do that. And just getting to know everyone is nice. You're not working with 30, 40 people. Everyone's name here, their kids' name, their wives' names, all of that stuff, which is really nice. I don't really have any challenges. I guess a personal challenge for me would be is I live in Winchester Bay, so I just drive. Like, that's my biggest challenge for work, I think, is just the drive to and from work every day.
How long is it?
It's about 35 minutes.
Yeah, that's a long
35, 45, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Katie. So
No
Neil Neil and Robbie, I'm going to switch yours up because Ricardo just dropped a different question in the chat that I think applies better to you two. Best and worst part of being an owner or manager?
I guess I'll go first. I'm going to do a little bit of your previous question and this too. I love being challenged and having the ability to work with new technology, and trying to problem solve and figure things out. That's fun. Best part, I've got an awesome crew. Everybody on here is amazing, and they all are really good at what they do. Most challenging part of being an owner, I would say, is all of the paperwork and policies and records that go into it now, especially with some of the future growth plans we have here. And God bless Robbie, because I couldn't do it all myself, or even touch it with a 10-foot pole. And one of the hardest things, or something you don't like the most, and this goes because me and Robbie are owners, and because we do like our people and allow them that family time, the hardest part as an owner or manager is HR. I mean, if Drew's got an emergency or somebody has to run away or take off and go do something, that's fine. We understand that and we do it. But as an owner or a manager, we have to pick up that slack, fill the solution, figure it out. And so it's difficult for us some days, but we chose to be where we're at, and that's why we do it.
I like it. Thanks, Neil.
Yep. Neil hit a lot of those kind of on the head. As the owner, the phrase is "the buck stops with you" type of thing. And so sometimes there's customer issues that we just want to stick our head in the sand about and pretend they don't exist, but we can't do that, and we have to fix them. And we picked a pretty as we continue to grow, being an ISP is a very regulated thing, and we have to do a lot of regulatory things, which really equates to paperwork that a lot of small businesses don't have to do. And some of the burden that places on us from a time perspective and a cost perspective is pretty significant. And I never grew up thinking that I wanted to be like a paperwork expert or want to be reading federal code. That even to this day, I'd rather go get my teeth cleaned. And they just
root canal, what?
Yeah, exactly. There's just some stuff in business that you kind of have to persevere through. And so if somebody's thinking about starting a business and looking at options, and they want to fix cars or do hair or create a smartphone app or whatever the case is, there's going to be stuff in there that you have to do, like taxes, that you don't really want to do. But that's just kind of part of being a business owner. And that's been a struggle for me is, Neil shares some of this too, is that we just have a lot of stuff that isn't any fun to do. And as the leaders and the owners, a lot of that just falls onto us. Mm-hmm. Kind of one of the middle of the road things that's challenging, Neil and I both share this thing too, as we continue to grow, the skill set of what we need continues to diversify. And Neil and I are at that spot where we have people on our team that are doing things that Neil and I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
And historically, Neil and I are always used to kind of being able to just wrestle it and muscle it through and figure it out and get it done. And we're just not there anymore. And Neil mentioned Dane's already doing stuff that Neil can't do in 365. We have Chris, one of our made outside plant guys, that's doing stuff Neil and I can't do anymore. And so there's a lot of those things that we are experiencing as business owners that we just kind of have to embrace. We can't be everywhere all the time, and that kind of delegation becomes a bigger deal.
Right.
But one of the things that's awesome for me that I love is the team that we have and that we're building, and being able to trust any of our staff to say, hey, let's go try to get this thing done, and let's go get it done. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be something fiber related, or I would trust really anybody on this call in our organization to have to go pick up one of my kids from soccer and go hang out with them for a day. And so some of that's working in a small business, and we don't have 200 employees. Mm-hmm. And so Katie kind of said it earlier, is we know each other, we know everybody's home situations and significant others and kids, and so we can be understanding of everybody's situations, but still kind of hold each other to high performance standards.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. So I'm hearing a lot of talk of expansion. And one of these questions is, how has COVID affected your hiring processes? Are you growing through COVID?
Yes, on paper, we have grown through COVID. Some of that is kind of the nature of our business. As we kind of install more and more internet customers, we have what's called a recurring revenue business. So some businesses like Les Schwab, they'll sell you a tire, but it's once.
Yes.
And you might come back 3, 4, 5 years down the road and buy another set of tires. And so companies like Les Schwab are after creating that experience that wants people to come back when they have that choice. For a company like ours, or Netflix even, you pay those companies every single month for a service to be delivered to you. Zoom is the exact same way. And so recurring income or recurring revenue businesses have lots of unique things to them. So when we start adding customers, kind of the year that we might add somebody, we don't experience all of their revenue in that year. But in year number 2, that customer now is on board for that full year. And so as we continue to add more and more internet customers, that recurring revenue continues to grow and gets us to be growing over COVID. So we had a lot of adjustments with COVID. I might actually kind of throw that to Katie and Neil a little bit too, if one of you guys want to answer that.
Yeah. Any major changes?
Oh, there's a lot of major changes. I will say from an operational standpoint that we were going through a move from our physical office location, and we had plans to build a big warehouse and a new office over at our business park, where our main fiber head end is and stuff like that. And we actually were inside of a construction trailer temporarily when COVID hit. And when COVID hit operationally, everybody's brakes went on, not only for going out in public and going to the grocery store and freaking out and stocking up and staying home, but investors that wanted to spend money to build buildings, or property developers, or everybody was unsure of everything. So operationally, we ended up stuck in a trailer for a time being, and having to make adjustments to how we interact with customers. And so, Katie, I might let you take the customer interaction piece and how we handled COVID during that, and today still for that matter.
Yeah, a lot of customers didn't want us. We do a lot of home visits, so we can go set up your printer, your computer at your home. And a lot of customers, we didn't feel comfortable going in the home, and they didn't feel comfortable having us there. So a lot of us worked from home for almost 3 months.
Okay.
And we did pick up and drop off computer at the doorstep. And even today, we keep our door shut, and we can only have a certain amount of customers in the office at the same time, or here for a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it altered how we have our customer interactions. We were onboarding some school district households during the process when COVID hit, and Matt would actually drive to the location and drop off a self-onboarding like router kit. And so they would, plug it in, and we'd try to support them over the phone to plug this in, and have a different tech that go out and does the install. And there was some logistics behind it, and like she said, there still is today.
Yeah.
We were pretty lucky as a business. We're a tech company, and so we have a lot of tools already available to us. We already had our entire phone system is in Microsoft Teams, and so we can make and receive phone calls from work anywhere we want to. Most of us already had laptops, and so we were able to make that adjustment to working from home really quickly and efficiently. It just stunk that we had to make it, because most of us like being together. But even as you guys can see now, I'm at home, but I was in the office all day yesterday, and so we can kind of come in and out of the office a little bit. The way our new office is laid out, everybody has a pretty good private space, and so we can appropriately socially distance, and we kind of have a front office, back office type thing, and have a little bit of space that we can manage some of those expectations with.
Very cool. All right, folks, I got to wrap this up. Very last question. Where can people find your job postings if and when you are hiring?
Well, we are going to be hiring probably 3 or 4 people before the end of the year, actually. And all of those will absolutely hit Facebook. And Katie can say this for sure, but I think every single one of our job postings we've been putting on Indeed. And so Indeed is a really common one for us too. I think we put a few of them on LinkedIn, but Indeed and Facebook, we get a lot of people from referrals,
Okay.
friend of a friend type of thing, which a lot of times comes from personal relationships or Facebook.
All
And
right.
remember, it pays to no Neil.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. This was a fun, big panel. And thank you to the students who tuned in, and we will see you next week for our tour of Bring Recycling. All right. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
everybody.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care.
Bye.